well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thanks so much for tuning into another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. It is great to have you with us today. Perhaps never in our lifetime has the words of the Second Amendment been so appropriate here, because the security of a free state is certainly being threatened around the nation right now, and the right of the people to keep and bear arms is more important than ever before. As riots grip cities across the nation, a violent weekend, we are starting to see some stories of armed citizens, not, by the way, engaging in acts of vigilantism, but simply protecting themselves and their families. Case in point, story out of Seattle, Washington, actually the Seattle suburb of Bellevue, Washington, where neighbors helping neighbors, just standing guard at the entrance to their neighborhood as looting and rioting took place blocks away in downtown Bellevue. You've got armed citizens who are protecting themselves and their neighbors. Julio Rosas from Townhall.com, our sister site here at Bearing Arms, he has been on the ground in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the protests erupted after the death of George Floyd 1 week ago. Julio arrived in town, I believe it was Thursday afternoon. He's been there ever since, and he joined us today to talk about what he has seen, who he has spoken to, and what might happen next in the Twin Cities. Take a look and a listen. Julio, thanks so much for coming on the program, sir. It's good talking with you today.
Yes, thank you.
First of all, how are you recovering? I know you got whacked with a rubber bullet a couple of days ago. You doing all right?
Yes. I was shot with a rubber bullet on Friday, and I want to make sure that people understand that I wasn't in the crowd of protesters / rioters. I was actually off to the side by myself. And I was in the middle of the two groups, again, off to the side. But I was trying to get video of their confrontation back and forth. And apparently some officer thought I was too close to them, which I want to be clear, I wasn't. And he just turned and shot at me. It hit center mass, so I'll give him credit to that. But there's no internal damage, thankfully. So it's healing, but it's healing. I'm gonna be hurt for a while.
For those who have not been following, your coverage for Townhall and on your Twitter feed has just been absolutely incredible. I mean, you've really been, on the ground in the thick of things, reporting on what's been going on in Minneapolis. I know that you're getting ready to head back home now, but tell me, from the time that you got there, which was Thursday afternoon,
yep,
through last night, how have things changed? In terms of the riots, in terms of the looting, in terms of the peaceful protests that have been taking place there in Minneapolis?
So I can say that as it appears for right now, things have calmed down significantly. So the problem wasn't really even during the day, except for Thursday when looting was just widespread at the Target and the grocery store that was near the 3rd Precinct, which is kind of one of the epicenters for this whole thing. It appears now that they finally have the manpower to enforce the curfew. They tried enforcing the curfew on Friday, and it just did not go well at all. As soon as they let the crowd that had gathered around their perimeter know that they were going to be in violation, if they didn't leave within 10 minutes, that's when the crowd turned from protesters to rioters, as they started to throw all sorts of stuff that they actually had laid out close by, such as water bottles, rocks, jugs, anything, branches, anything that they could throw at the National Guardsmen and riot police. And so that's why I said it appears that they chased them away, because as obviously as I can attest to, they were responding with tear gas, rubber bullets, and flashbangs. They pulled out of that area completely, and that was because it now appears that they went into reinforce the 5th Precinct, which was about 2 miles down Lake Street. And so, unfortunately, the crowd was following them. And again, because there was no law enforcement presence, they were looting and destroying things all along down Lake Street as they were following them. So people were peeling off from like the main crowd to burn and do stuff like that. Now As soon as it turns 8, there's still some people there's still some large crowd gatherings, as I saw last night, who were still out past curfew. But again, police cracked down on them. They actually swooped in, and they actually I almost got caught. Actually, that's how fast it happened. They just swooped in on all sides near the downtown area, and I was able to thankfully get out of that area with some of the local members of the press by letting them know that we were just media, and so they thankfully let us out. But it's a huge difference from Thursday night till today. Yeah.
And Julio, there's been a lot of talk about who the rioters and the looters are, and I want to differentiate those folks who are smashing windows, setting fires, from those who are engaged in peaceful protest. Are these two distinct groups? Obviously, I'm sure that there's some overlap. There are some folks who have nefarious intent who are hanging out with the folks who do not, and then as night falls, that's when the violence begins. But who are the ones who are wreaking havoc or trying to wreak havoc in Minneapolis, as opposed to those who are trying to honor George Floyd, who are calling for justice and are doing so, without trying to destroy the city?
Yeah. So just like the peaceful protesters during the day, the people who were wreaking havoc on the city comprised of all sorts of people. It's a very diverse crowd. I mean, I don't really understand why all of a sudden people are trying to solely blame white supremacists in the city. I haven't yet. Are there white people that are taking part in the destruction? Absolutely. But as I've seen, and as you can see with some of the videos that I posted, there's also brown people and black people who are participating in that, and it's just really, really disgusting that they're trying to put this on white supremacists. And not to say and I'm not saying that because I harbor any feelings towards them. That's not the case at all. But it seems that they're trying to use white supremacists to not blame any minorities who are taking part in this, which they absolutely are. So that's not to say again that that there are minorities who are peaceful, and that there absolutely are. But that's during the day. Everything changes as we've seen now across the country. Unfortunately, everything changes as soon as night hits, and that's when they take advantage of that. And again, it is a very diverse crowd that takes part in that destruction and looting and assault towards officers. So it's really, really disgusting that they're trying to find blame elsewhere for reasons I'm not entirely sure why, but I can assure people that people of all ethnic backgrounds are taking part in this.
We've seen folks of all ethnic backgrounds protecting businesses, protecting neighborhoods as well. I think it was Friday, there was a video that went viral of some black St. Paul business owners who were standing guard outside of their businesses. I know we've seen other armed citizens protecting businesses. How prevalent and widespread is that phenomena that you've been able to see on the ground in Minneapolis?
It's pretty widespread at this point, because obviously a lot of the destruction and looting, there's neighborhoods nearby, and so this is where people live. This is no longer near the business side or where the police are. This is people's neighborhoods, and so as I made my way down from the 5th precinct to the 3rd precinct, which again is about a 2-mile hike, there were plenty of people who were outside guarding their businesses or organizations. There was like a Native American organization that had a building, and there were people outside of that guarding it, guarding the parking lot, guarding the cars. And some of them were armed, I can say. And in the nearby neighborhoods, people had made makeshift barricades, and I was told that they actually had gathered during the day and kind of had like a citizen town hall, trying to talk to each other and say, well, what should we do? And the decision was made to start blocking off their streets and start guarding outside to ward off anybody who might want to break in or cause any damage. So it's unfortunate that they felt the need to take their protection into their own hands. But I mean, as you and I know, the police aren't always going to be there, especially when it's such a destruction and mayhem on this large a scale. I actually called 911 for an incident, and they didn't pick up. They called back, to their credit, they called back, but they called back about 2.5 hours later. And so obviously we're beyond the when you need a cop that's 10 minutes away, right?
Right.
But that's how insane it got. Thankfully, I think now they finally have the manpower to start keeping law and order consistently throughout the city. But it took until Saturday night for them to do that. And obviously there's a lot of destruction. Really quick, the local Fox station said that over 200 businesses had either been damaged or destroyed in the looting and the riots.
My God. I mean, and as you're walking down and you're sharing some of these images, it really looks like a war zone. The last time I was in Minneapolis was for the 2004 RNC. And there were protesters. You had Black Bloc protesters back then. You had, the standard professional grievance mongers. But this is something else entirely. I mean, this really looks like, you're covering the Syrian civil war as opposed to walking through the streets of the Twin Cities.
No, absolutely. And they on, what was it, Saturday night, they when they were forcing the curfew, they pushed the rioters into the nearby neighborhoods, and they started making makeshift barricades in the middle of the intersections to try to disrupt the police line that was following them. And so they also in one case, in one of the barricades, they actually set it on fire to really try to stop them in their tracks. And there was one gentleman, credit to him, he lived right near that intersection, and he was asking them. He said, "Hey, who's going to clean up this mess? You guys don't live here. We're going to have to clean this up." And he was getting shouted at by the rioters, telling him to leave, telling him like this is not his business anymore. It's bigger than him and stuff like that. And they said, "We're trying to save people." And the gentleman, the guy who was there, he said, "This is how you're saving people, by setting barricades on fire? Like, really? That's how you're trying to save people?" So a lot of neighbors nearby were very unhappy with the tactics of the rioters, and obviously you can understand why.
Absolutely. And we've seen, we started off this interview talking about the rubber bullet that you took to the chest. There's also been a lot of criticism of how the National Guard has been performing. I think you've probably seen the video of the guardsmen walking through, again, one of these neighborhood streets, telling people to get inside their homes. One woman who's filming all of a sudden gets shot with paintballs. What is your impression? Obviously, everybody's condemning the rioters and the looters, and rightfully so. What is your impression of the response by the police and by the National Guard that you've been able to see?
Yeah, so obviously policing is not an easy job just under normal circumstances, and we're in extraordinary circumstances. I've seen some videos of other where clearly people are reporters, and this is even beyond just the CNN thing, because at least, as bad as the situation that was, all he was got arrested. Now we've had some kinetic action against reporters, even though, again, some of them are reporters, because you can clearly tell who's throwing things and who's not. So it's unfortunate that there seems to kind of be an overreaction in some cases when it comes to either the National Guard or law enforcement, because they're not helping their case at all. That they're not police brutality is not widespread, right? So it's unfortunate that they're kind of jumping the gun here, and it's not good. It's not helping the situation at all. I can say that.
I was going to say, what is the reaction that as you've been talking to folks in the neighborhoods and on the city streets? Generally speaking, what is the what's the reaction to how Governor Walz has handled things, how Mayor Fry has handled things? Looking at this from several thousand miles away, it seems like the response was A, too late in coming, and B, very, very weak. I mean, you talk about even the first night of the curfew, there was really no way for the law enforcement and the small National Guard numbers who were on the ground to enforce that. What's the attitude of the average Minneapolis resident who's not out there rioting, who's not out there looting, who just wants their neighborhood to get back to some semblance of normalcy?
Yeah, they're not happy at all. And as I pointed to, the evidence of that is that they've had to form kind of neighborhood watches on their own. I mean, they had to do all that. There was one gentleman who was out. He was a hefty guy. He was out there drinking a White Claw right at night, and he seemed to kind of be enjoying it, just enjoying time out of the house, I guess. But yeah, no. People are upset. People are upset at the state and local leadership, and rightfully so, because the Mayor Fry, I mean, he looked like a deer in headlights after, I believe, Thursday night's riots. Because one reporter just straight up asked him, he just said, "What are we doing here?" And Mayor Fry just kind of like, well, "What do you mean?" But it was just, I mean, it's just simple frustration. And again, with Thursday nights, because that's when the third precinct was burned after the cops had evacuated. It kind of shows the leadership failure on that, because they could have easily sent in more reinforcements, because the police in the third precinct were holding their own initially, but they were outnumbered, and so they could have held the precinct, in my opinion, if just reinforcements were sent, but they weren't, and instead the order was given to evacuate, and we saw what happened.
We did, and I think the city's going to be living with the aftermath of that decision and several others for years to come. Julio, is there anything else that you want the readers at Townhall to know about, or the viewers here on Bearing Arms Camping coming to know about? What isn't being covered, or maybe what is not being covered enough that we should be paying attention to, that you've been able to see while you're on the ground there?
Yeah, there's now a narrative within the media that because the PBS White House correspondent Yamshi, I can't pronounce her. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. But the other day she quote tweeted Trump saying that because Trump had called them anarchists, and she said he's calling them anarchists without evidence, and that's just a mind blowing thing to tweet. And trying to act like you're a journalist, because, regular protesters aren't burning down precincts. Those are anarchists. Those are people who want riots and destructions. I mean, the evidence is not just in Minneapolis anymore. It's all over the country. And again, I do not know why members of the media want to try to excuse this. It is absolutely ridiculous. And again, it just shows why people don't trust the media, and rightfully so. And so I replied to her with my video of the cops being evacuated out of the third precinct, and anarchists, rioters, throwing all sorts of objects at the cop cars as they were leaving. And as you can imagine, when I posted that video, guess who was celebrating that action? Anarchists. People who thought that was cool and saying, like, heck yeah, now is the time for the revolution, revolutionaries, all sorts of stuff. So I don't want to just single her out, because it's not just her, but she's one of, like, the main leading proponents of this absolute false narrative. So I don't want to say don't trust the mainstream media, but I mean, really, 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 really take what they say with a grain of salt.
I think that is excellent advice. Particularly, I mean, I always say in breaking news situations, wait for the facts to emerge. We've basically been living in breaking news for the past week. Oftentimes there's not enough time to go back and fact check stuff and say, okay, well, let's look and see if this was right or not. And so you do get all kinds of, I think, just the regular misinformation that comes in sort of the fog of covering a live news event, a breaking news event. But you're right. There are narratives that are being put forth here by members of the media, by politicians who want to try to put their own spin on things. Frankly, again, as you and I have been talking, I think the truth is much more complicated. You have people who are out there protesting during the day, who are angry at the riots that are taking place at night. We've seen videos of protesters confronting one another when, someone starts to get out of hand or smashes a brick. I saw a video this morning of a black woman, I believe in Minneapolis, but I'm not sure what city this was, confronting a couple of white guys who had handed a black guy a brick. And she said, "What are you doing? Get out of here. You're going to get us killed. What are you doing trying to get us to start something?" There's all kinds of things I think that are happening as these individuals who are out in the streets interact with one another that the media might not pick up on and may not really be interested in covering, because the simpler the narrative, I think the better for the national media.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's just mind-boggling, and I'm too tired now to kind of deal with that. So,
well, listen, man. Again, you had amazing coverage. I'm glad that you are mostly okay and will recover. You are heading back home now today?
Yes, I'm actually going to Los Angeles. I've been visiting family out of there. Because of the pandemic, and so apparently the pandemic's over now. But I'm kind of going out of the frying pan and into the fire since things have started up there. So I'll continue coverage with that stuff over in Los Angeles.
All right. Well, Julio, listen, man, I really do appreciate you taking a couple minutes today. Again, just congratulations on some excellent work. I hope that you do feel better, and look forward to talking again very soon, man.
All right. Thank you.
Julio Rosas, our friend at townhall.com, joining us here on Bearing Arms Cam and Company. It probably goes without saying that, I think it's always a good time for Americans to exercise their right to keep and bear arms. But I have talked to so many people over the weekend. People on Twitter were sending me messages on DM. I had texts from folks I haven't talked to in months, all asking me variations on the same question. So what does it take to actually buy a gun? What do I have to do? What's the process? What do I need to know before I go down to the gun store? Here's my advice. First of all, I could tell you, well, here's the type of gun that you should look for. Listen, the inventory at most gun shops, pretty limited right now anyway. I mean, remember, we've had a run on firearms since basically late February to certainly by mid-March. Gun sales were soaring. Ammunition sales were soaring. And they really, in March, they were sky high. April, sky high. A little bit less than March, but still far above average. May, numbers might have started to, trend downward just a little bit, but I'm telling you, the industry has not been able to keep up with the demand for both firearms and ammunition. So if you go to a gun store, you're trying to buy a firearm for the first time, keep in mind that your selection is going to be quite limited. Saw our friend John Stokes from The Prepared over the weekend and tweeted out he had gone to some gun shops in Austin, Texas, and some of the surrounding suburbs. And he said, listen, 22 long rifle, plenty on the shelf in terms of ammunition. But if you're looking for, common calibers like 9mm, 223, it's gone. It's been wiped out, and it's, they'll come back. It's not like ammunition is not being manufactured. It is, but the supply simply can't keep up with the demand right now. So if you are, looking for a first gun for home defense, you're probably going to have better luck at the moment with a shotgun than you would be with a rifle or a handgun, at least in some common calibers. Again, a lot of this is just going to depend on what you find at your local shop. It's also, going to be very, very busy. A lot of shop owners, they want to take the time to talk with customers, help them out, but they are swamped at the moment. So if you have a friend who's a gun owner and you are unsure about, what to do, and I've never been to a gun store before, and I don't know what to say, and I don't know what to want, I don't know what I want, my advice to you is if you know somebody who has experience with firearms, see if you can take them with you to the gun store. You might have to, buy them a pizza or a beer afterwards, but, if you can, have some informed opinions coming along with you as you go to a gun store. We're going to be talking more about that topic, by the way, throughout the week here on Bearing Arms Cam and Company. I do want everybody to be safe and responsible. Don't go out and buy a gun and think that, once I bought it, that's all I need to do, and now I'm going to be safe. I'm going to be okay. No, you need to be responsible with that firearm. You need to know what the laws are when it comes to self-defense, because the last thing you want to do is buy a firearm for self-defense and end up in a situation where you use it aggressively and then you're the one facing charges. We don't want that to happen. We want things to calm down in communities across the country right now, not ramp up. All right. With that admonition, let's get to today's armed citizen story. Our recidivist report, our good deed of the day. We'll start with our recidivist report from Springfield, Massachusetts, where a pair of men arrested once again, actually, there are 3 individuals arrested in all, already known to police, but on this most recent arrest, picked up on weapons charges. Ryan Walsh, a spokesman for the Springfield, Massachusetts Police Department, told Mass Live that officers responded to a report of a suspicious vehicle about 5:45 Thursday afternoon. When police arrived at the scene, the vehicle sped away, ended up crashing into some woods there in Springfield, Massachusetts. 2 of the folks inside the car ended up taking off on foot. One of them identified as 21-year-old Xavier Sands of Springfield, Massachusetts. He's been out on bail since May the 10th, after he was arraigned on firearms and drug offenses. Police checked to see if anybody was in the car that crashed. The car was empty, but they did see 2 guns on the passenger floor of the vehicle where Sands had been sitting. Later, police said they watched as Sands was picked up by a car nearby, brought back to a location where police attempted to stop that vehicle. There was a short chase. Eventually, the vehicle was pulled over. Sands was arrested, charged with 2 counts of possession of a firearm without an FID card. A couple minutes later, officers were attempting to make an unrelated motor vehicle stop when a car sped past police. They were able to locate the car, determined that it was unregistered, made a traffic stop. As they approached, they said the passenger, identified as 21-year-old Deshaun Ortiz of Springfield, walked away from the car. He was stopped. Police searched the vehicle, found a handgun in a bag along with Ortiz's identification. That gun had been reported stolen in Vermont. Ortiz apparently had been released on bail following his arraignment in December of 2018 on heroin and cocaine charges. He was arrested 2 weeks after that on heroin distribution charges, but was able to bail out and had remained free until he was arrested on Thursday. The third arrest, the driver of that second vehicle, 22-year-old Nathan Santiago of Holyoke, Mass., charged with failure to stop at a stop sign and a couple of other traffic-related offenses. Santiago also, by the way, on probation for armed and masked robbery, in which he was sentenced to just 2.5 years behind bars for armed robbery. And by the way, sentenced to 2.5 years. Mass Live says he was released early. So there you go. 3 career criminals, once again, caught there in Massachusetts, unfortunately not likely to spend a great deal of time behind bars given their previous criminal history and what has happened. Now, today's Armed Citizen story of the day from McKees Rock, Pennsylvania, where a 70-year-old walking down the street, attacked by a complete stranger, stabbed by a complete stranger. Thankfully, that 70-year-old was armed and was able to protect himself. WPXI in Pittsburgh says Allegheny County Police still looking for this suspect. Man was walking about 10:15 at night, Wednesday evening, when police said he was attacked and stabbed with a knife by a man who was following the 70-year-old. Victim able to stop that attack, though, by pulling out a gun. He's a concealed carry holder there in Pennsylvania. He fired a shot. The man took off, rather. Police still searching for him. No word on if the suspect was hit at this point, but thankfully, the 70-year-old taken to the local hospital in serious condition, but he is expected to recover. And finally, our good deed of the day, also from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. And I got to tell you, I mean, as much awfulness as we have seen over the past few days, there are also these stories of generosity, stories of Americans coming together. They're without a doubt, we have people right now who are trying to tear this country apart. We have people who want to destroy, and they claim that they want to build on the ashes, but we haven't really heard much about their rebuilding plans. Instead, we've heard a lot about the need to burn it all down. But in the midst of this, and I know it's so easy to become cynical about our fellow Americans and our fellow human beings, but in the midst of all of this destruction, in the midst of this chaos, there are acts of kindness. There are people who are doing the right thing. And one of them, believe it or not, the CEO of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Yeah, this is pretty incredible. So during the riots on Saturday in downtown Pittsburgh, the CEO of the Pittsburgh Penguins, David Morehouse, came to the aid of a camera person for KDKA, as well as an anchor for KDKA, who had come under attack. According to the Pittsburgh Tribune, Ian Smith who's a cameraman for KDKA. He said that he was dragged to the ground by rioters. He was repeatedly struck. His camera was destroyed. And David Morehouse, CEO of the Pittsburgh Penguins, apparently saw what was going on and helped Smith get inside the PPG Paints Arena where the Pittsburgh Penguins play. Team spokesperson confirmed Morehouse's role in assisting Smith, but declined further comment. Smith ended up being hospitalized with multiple injuries, including head injuries. KDKA TV reporter Paul Martino, who was with Ian Smith, was also hospitalized after he experienced chest pains. He ended up posting about this on Facebook over the weekend. There you can see a picture of Ian Smith there in the back of the ambulance on his way to the hospital. Martino described Smith as being, quote, brutally beaten by protesters, thrown to the ground and stomped on. As I approached him, demonstrators threatened me, but I got away. We are both in Mercy Hospital tonight. Ian has a bad head injury. I have severe chest pains, but we are going to make it. Stay away from the protests. Give peace a chance. You know, it is it's good advice to give peace a chance, but I think it is also good advice to be prepared in case the folks don't want to give you the opportunity to find peace. So again, I know that there are a lot of Americans out there who are heading to gun stores for the very first time. Seen a lot of folks say over the weekend, well, this puts an end to the gun control debate for a decade. No more gun control debate. As much as I would love that to be the case, by the way, I'm not sure I agree. You look at, historically speaking, when was the last time that we had riots as widespread and as significant as the ones that we have seen over the past week in the United States? 1968, right? What happened to our Second Amendment in 1968? You had the passage of the Gun Control Act in 1968. Now, part of that was spurred on by the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. But the riots in the United States in 1968 as well, I think really led to a push to pass the Gun Control Act of 1968. So yes, as we are watching Americans, again, of all racial backgrounds, all across the country, lawfully use firearms to protect their businesses, to protect their homes, to protect their families, to protect themselves. And many of us as gun owners are cheering that on. We are glad to see that. We are glad to see that folks are, again, acting responsibly in defense of their livelihoods and their lives. Keep in mind, gun control advocates haven't changed their mind. They haven't all of a sudden decided that the Second Amendment is a good idea and, maybe I should go buy a gun after all. No, they're going to continue to push. Michael Bloomberg is going to continue to spend millions of dollars in states around the country to try to flip state legislatures this November, to try to put Joe Biden in the White House with his anti-gun agenda, to try to flip the U.S. Senate and to try to keep the House of Representatives in control of anti-gun Democrats. So despite what you are seeing in the news, despite the chaos on the streets, I don't want you to think, well, the debate is over. We still need your voice. We still need your activism. We still need you to protect and secure the right to keep and bear arms because, again, those opponents of our rights, they are not going away. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Camp & Company. I do want to thank you for being a part of the program today. We'll be back tomorrow with more of the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. Don't forget, you can subscribe to Townhall Media on YouTube or Bearing Arms Camp & Company on Apple Podcasts. That way you will never miss a program. You can also become a VIP Gold member of Townhall Media, help support the efforts of reporters like Julio Rosas out there in the field, help support the journalism we're doing here on Bearing Arms Camp & Company each and every day. We truly do thank you for your support, and I hope until we talk again that you are well, you are safe, and you are free. We'll see you soon with another edition of Bearing Arms Camp & Company.